We're going to review just a couple things before we go to solving percent word problems. First, let's review what we mean by percent. 30% of 50 means 30 out of 100 would be how many out of 50? Because percent means per 100. And the way that you would write that mathematically is 0.30 times 50. That's how you write 30% of 50. That's how you compute it. 0.30 times 50 is 15. Now, when you're doing the percent word problems, you'll get to a point in a lot of these where you've got two of the numbers and you're trying to figure out the other number. And it might be something like 1.6 times n equals 80. Well, you can't just try to think real hard and think, what times 1.6 gives me 80? Now, if the numbers are easy, like 2 times 5 equals 10, and let's say that 5 is missing, and so you've got 2 times n equals 10. You can just think about it. Well, that would be 5. But the kind of numbers that we have in percent word problems, they're too hard to just think about and figure out the answer. So you need to remember something that you already know, but you may not think of. That's why we're reviewing it. If two numbers multiply together to equal the third, like the a times b equals c, it doesn't matter what the numbers are. This is always true. And if we know c and we know b, but a is the one we don't know, well, we can figure out what a is, because if a times b equals c, then if we divide c by b, that tells us what a is. Like 2 times 5 equals 10, so 10 divided by 5 equals 2. And if we didn't know what the 2 was, we could divide 10 by 5 and get it. And that's always true. So when the numbers are too difficult to just think of what it is, what you need to remember is you can just divide and figure out the missing number. Now, this is another thing that comes up in the word problems quite a bit. You'll have some missing number, and you'll have a problem where like something plus 60% more of it gives us 80. Like they make it into a little story, and you can write down what it means mathematically like this. And this comes up a lot in these word problems, where you've got the missing number plus 60% of the missing number equals some number they tell you, 80. So you write it like that. And now there's a few mathematical things that you need to remember that make this a lot easier to do. First of all, that missing number n, put a 1 on it, because it's really it's 1n. And the math that you do to solve this, if you don't write the 1, you have to just have it be invisible and keep it in your head. And as a math teacher, that was probably one of the most common reasons why people missed a problem. If they needed to just remember that there's really a 1 there, they would forget about it partway through. And even though they knew how to do the problem, they miss it because they forget about that invisible 1. So it's always a good idea, write that 1 down. N is really 1n. And then you won't be as likely to make probably the most common mistake that people make in math, even though they know how to do the problem. So you write that 1 on. And now to add those together, since they both have an n, 1n plus 0.6n, you can add the 1 plus 0.60 separate from the n. See, that's why it's important to have that 1, because people just accidentally think in their mind that it's nothing, and they'll have nothing plus 0.60, but it's 1. So 1 plus 0.60 times n equals 80, and then you add those two together, that's 1.60 times n equals 80. And then the trick that we talked about a minute ago, it's not really a trick, it's the math. You can't think in your head and figure out what times 1.60 is going to give me 80. But we know that if 1.60 times n equals 80, then 80 divided by 1.60 equals n. And so we can do that on a calculator. I can't even do that in my head, but you could do that on a calculator, and then you know what n is.